Tonight on News Compass, Kenya is a country with big ambitions to continue to remain Eastern Central Africa's powerhouse. Nairobi remains a dominant regional player with presence in Somalia and South Sudan. But we have deep-seated political problems, among them the culture of disfigured by violence and uncertainty after every electoral cycle. Tribalism, corruption and deep-seated poverty supplements the problem at hand for the country. However, the just concluded Blue Economic Conference in the capital Nairobi adds unto recent activities that have placed Kenya strategically across the globe. So how do we insulate our foreign policies from alteration fundamentally by our poisoned political culture and continuous maneuvers regionally by Ethiopia, Somalia and Eritrea? Well, be part of the conversation on Twitter. The hashtag is News Compass at Ebru TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Of course, I'll be joined for that discussion by the Chief Administrative Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ababu Namwamba. He is the former Member of Parliament for Budalangi constituency. Happy to have you, Honorable Namwamba, on set. I do appreciate your time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Asante
me.
sana. Well, a lot to discuss here from the continental front and international front. We will put things into perspective, but allow us to kickstart regionally here in the country and locally, because Kenya is seen as a bastion of hope in the country with regards to the liberal democracy and the progress that we have made in terms of the liberal constitution that we have passed in 2010. But we need to anchor our position and remain a dominant regional player in the region. How do we remain the gateway to Eastern Central Africa and be seen as a darling of the East and the West by the international community?
Thank you very much. I'm actually happy that we are having this conversation now, especially in the afterglow of the very successful, first ever, by the way, first ever Sustainable Blue Economy Conference, which was a roaring success. 17,600 delegates from 183 countries across the length and breadth of the globe in Nairobi to make commitments on how we can exploit more sustainably resources that lie in our waters. And everybody left Nairobi agreed and with consensus that Kenya had really raised the bar in terms of bringing the world together to talk about an agenda as significant as this. But now you raise the issue of how we can continue to hold our dominance regionally. And I would say that our position, regionally speaking, has been earned. It's not a position that was handed to us on a platter. It has been earned, one, because of our very good relations with our neighbors. We have maintained very, very cordial relations with our neighbors. We are very supportive of regional initiatives. Whether you're talking about integration efforts, Kenya has been at the heart of efforts to bring East Africa together. In fact, the first phase of the East African community first mooted in 1967. And the second phase, after the collapse in 77, the second phase of the year 2000, Kenya was at the heart of it. You talk about IGAD and the role of IGAD in peace security initiatives in the region. Kenya, again, has been at the heart of that. You look at the work we've done in Somalia that is going on still. The work that Kenya has done to help bring South Sudan back to the path of stability, security, and prosperity. Our supporting role and our very significant role, by the way, in the rapprochement between Ethiopia and Eritrea, that has made a huge leap in terms of bringing stability in this region. So whichever direction you look, you see a footprint of Kenya, and it's a positive footprint. But you know, we also do respect what goes on around us. We respect our neighbors. And significantly, we make effort to set a good example, such that even politically speaking, because people always say Kenya's politics is so robust, but our politics is also on a positive trajectory in the sense that we have anchored it on constitutionalism, so that constitutionalism becomes our unifying public philosophy. We may disagree on the manner and the style of politics, but then when it comes to the constitution, we obey and bend the authority and the power of the constitution and the people.
Okay, we need to be a card-carrying nation, isn't it? Then that before we come to the geopolitics, you mentioned, I'm glad, it's fascinating that Isaias Afwerki, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, and Somalia's Mohamed Abdullahi have come together in what looks like a triangle of a regional dominance in the Horn of Africa region. But equally at home, we still need to clean our political house, isn't it? Because there are issues of poverty, unemployment, corruption that have, sucked energy off our economy, and we need to ensure that the blocks holding the country together are intact, so that when we play these cards on the foreign land, then we remain relevant continuously. So how well do we need to put the house in order locally?
You know, just like every household, your household, my household, anyone else's household has got its own domestic issues. Every nation has got its own internal issues, internal affairs. But what makes nations great, especially on the international arena, because a nation is determined, a nation's greatness is determined by how well it takes care of its citizens and how well it plays among the community of nations. What makes a nation great in that respect is how you keep your eye firmly on the goal, and the goal being the strategic national interest. So that you may play your politics domestically, you may, and the politics can become very heated. And by the way, it's not just in Kenya. You have observed the American politics, for instance. American politics can be very competitive, it can be very heated. You've seen the politics in South Africa, the succession of Jacob Zuma by Cyril Ramaphosa was not necessarily without its own dynamics. And so every country has got its own, those unique dynamics. But great nations keep an eye on what is strategically important for the nation. And that is what Kenya must do. And that is why even the great step taken by His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta to calm the political temperatures here and even facilitate a continental role for Prime Minister Raila Odinga must be seen in that context, that we can compete locally, but when it comes to regional and international issues, we stand as Kenya and we fly our flag proudly and strongly in the best interest of our people and our nation.
Okay, having mentioned that, we still remain geopolitically the bastion of hope. 8 years ago, we promulgated a constitution, eloquent, admired, transparent, and one of the most loved constitution in the country. But we are engulfed by nations that are literally in lesser capacity, unlike Kenya, do respect their constitutions. And in the papers earlier today, Sudan's Omar al-Bashir is seeking to extend his term, has been in power since 1989. President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of Uganda's party NRM has amended Article 102 of the Constitution in what the opposition terms as the lifetime presidency in Uganda. So how well equal do we take the initiative of constitutionalism to our neighbors, even as we maintain the trade and bilateral relations which are diplomatic, equally preach them that they go about, how to go about the laws and the respect to the constitution, so that we can have a region that respects the rules of law that are enshrined in their respective constitutions?
First of all, it should be appreciated that Kenya respects the sovereignty of every nation. Every nation, as a sovereign nation, must be respected. And when it comes to the management of affairs of a nation, there is never a one-size-fits-all. Every country evolves and develops its own unique way of managing its internal affairs. In Kenya, we have decided that the best way to go is democratic constitutionalism, or constitutional democracy. You can look at it from both ends. And the constitutional democracy being that we shall compete politically, we shall have certain inalienable freedoms enshrined in our constitution. Among those inalienable freedoms is the freedom of political choice. That people can decide which political party to belong to, and that we shall have determined and frequent electoral cycles, and in those cycles, it's the will of the people that determine who shall be responsible for managing the affairs of our nation. We do encourage our neighbors and everybody around us to respect the will of the people, because the will of the people must really be the cornerstone of managing affairs of any nation. But respecting the will of the people is also done in the context of the peculiarities of every country.
Okay.
So you wouldn't, for instance, say a model that works in Kenya must work in Djibouti, or a model that works in Rwanda is going to work in Ethiopia. Every country has got its own unique. But we definitely stand for sovereignty, and we also stand for respect for the popular will, for the will of the people, and the basic inalienable rights of the people.
And of course, in the case of Uganda, although there is the sovereign respect of every nation to its borders, right groups do say that there is repressive regime which is raging and stays guided by the Constitution, though President Museveni has been faulted. But equally, what remains unresolved, and you are in a practical position to respond to that, I'm sure, is the issue of Migingo Island with Uganda, which is key strategic player and partner for Kenya, being the biggest trader with Nairobi. So what's the approach by the country? And we have been diplomatic enough, say, in the essence of solving that problem with Kampala. But in the long-term solution, how well do the people in Migingo Island, Kenyans on Migingo Island, see that what belongs to them is theirs, and what belongs to Ugandans is belongs to the people of Uganda? And what is the approach by our foreign policy, within the framework of our foreign policy towards Migingo Island?
Let me make it absolutely clear that the territorial integrity of Kenya is important, and the primary responsibility of any government is to secure the best interest of our people, and also to ensure that our territorial integrity is protected. But having said that, Kenya is also a strong proponent of a foreign policy we are calling Afrocentrism. Basically a foreign policy that focuses on Africa, that focuses on better relations on this continent, that encourages integration of the continent. And that's why Kenya has been at the heart of initiatives like the reforms of the African Union. I am off to Sierra Leone in the next 3 days to attend what is called the Committee of 10 Countries of the African Union that is driving reforms within the AU and the UN. And Kenya is at the heart of all that. Kenya was also the first country to sign and ratify and deliver to the African Union headquarters the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. And so Kenya does that because we believe in integration, and we believe that we should ultimately have a borderless Africa. An Africa where there can be free movement of goods, services, and people without worrying about these colonial borders where some character sat in some boardroom in Germany hundreds of years ago and petitioned this continent. Everybody would say, I think I like Mount Kenya, so I like the Nile, or I like the Victoria Falls. And these things have then come to haunt the continent. They have divided communities. You come to my home county of Busia, for instance, you have a large number of the Iteso in Uganda and Iteso equally in Kenya. The Samia in Kenya, the Samia in Uganda. You remember at one time you had Mudi Awor as vice president in Kenya, and Agra Wori is seeking to be president in Uganda, the Maasais in Tanzania and in Kenya. So we must move towards really getting rid of these very artificial borders that limit the movement of African people, the movement of goods and services across our continent. And if we do that, you'll unleash a whole 1.2 billion population. That's the population of Africa, from the Cape to Cairo, from Mombasa to Lagos, across the continent. But even as we move towards that, we need to resolve issues such as Migingo. And resolving Migingo is acknowledging certain facts. And I can tell you for free that a lot of work has gone into this particular issue. And it's not just about Migingo. It's just basically resolving all issues of maritime. Maritime boundaries can be very tricky, unlike land-based borders where you can use features like hills or rivers.
Simple geographic.
Yes, maritime borders can be a bit of a challenge. But there, a lot of work has gone into that. When I was a member of parliament, I even attended meetings in Uganda towards resolving this matter. And I know sooner rather than later, this is a matter that is going to be put to bed. It certainly should not be a matter to be regarded as being sufficient to cause any diplomatic problems between these two very good friendly neighbors.
Of course, and of
Kenya
course,
and Uganda.
good partners in terms of trade, because Uganda does remain a strategic player. But
very, very strategic for
my
us.
director, Jose, I think you have a clip about Migingo Island in which the current Budalangi Member of Parliament, Raphael Wanjira, did express or made sentiments about the issue with regards to Migingo before I come back to you. We have that clip? Yeah, okay, let's see it.
Tunalilia president. Mimi nilienda paka State House tukakutana na president. Yes, nikaambia president akaambia Amos wako alikuwa hapa, akasema Amos wako Museveni rafiki yako, enda ongea na yeye. I expected nikiwa South Africa wakati kongamano ilikuwa hapa ya kwamba president sasa ataongea na Museveni. Only kusikia nikiwa huko vile Museveni anaongea na madharau. Sasa utakagua hawa watu namna gani ujue huyu ndiye apike chai na maandazi na huyu mwingine aenda avue samaki apate pesa nyingi na huyu ana qualify kupika chai na maandazi. Kwa sababu vile tunaongea na wewe, samaki kilo moja ni shilingi 350. Sasa wewe ukiua mbuta moja ikuwe kilo 8, hiyo ni 2800. Sio ni pesa mingi, si hata nimeshinda buzi. So nani utaambia auze maandazi apate 2800?
And the outcry continues, Honorable Ababu Namwamba, and let me tie it up with this important aspect here, is that 7 years ago, in October 2011, we deployed boots in Somalia as part of the Operation Leader Entry, perhaps to ensure that Kenyans' interests, excuse me, are safeguarded in Somalia. And it appears, yes, there are fruits in terms of stabilizing the war-torn nation, but Kenyans have equally become principal targets of Al-Shabaab, who have carried out avengement attack. Now, coupling up that with Migingo Island, before we go to the African continent with regards to China, Beijing, London, Washington, sort of scramble and partition, what do you make sense in terms of making sense of the Operation Linda 7 years later, and responding to Honorable Raphael Wanjala about the decree from the people of Western Kenya? We need that general approach. So how do we package up that information, even as we still ensure that we do remain the biggest or key strategic partner for Uganda?
You know, peace, security and stability must be seen in the broadest context possible, in the sense that when you look at the Horn of Africa region, for instance, if there is instability in Somalia, or instability in South Sudan, or even in Eritrea or Djibouti, which we may not share a common border with, that instability affects us.
The entire region?
Yes. So that when one little corner of the region hurts or is in trouble, it sort of has a domino effect across the whole region. And that is why it is important for a country like Kenya, I mean, the Bible, the whole Quran, religious texts teach that to those that much is given, much is similarly expected. So, I mean, Kenya has been blessed with stability, with economic progress, and so a lot is expected of us, and we must continue to play a role to help the region stabilize, and for the shared prosperity then of the region. So Kenya will continue to play that role, and we don't play this role as a lone ranger. In Somalia, for instance, we are part of AMISOM. Okay.
Uganda,
yes. It's an African affair with the support of the United Nations. In fact, backed by a United Nations resolution. So we do this as a player in the context of collective responsibility, where we are part of that collective responsibility, and that is a role that Kenya will continue to play. As far as Migingo and the issues of Lake Victoria are concerned, all I can say is to go back to the point that there is a strong determination through the East African community, through the African Union, to ultimately do away with borders and have a borderless East Africa and a borderless Africa. But as we move towards that ultimate goal, we have to reduce these tensions, and we have to reduce scramble for resources, and realize that we share these resources, and we must take responsibility to act in a manner that recognizes that this is a shared resource. Lake Victoria is a shared resource.
Between
and
Kenya,
you cannot
Tanzania,
handle it in any other way other than as a shared resource.
And a tripartite sort of agreement between Tanzania, Kenya, and
we
Uganda.
have to work together. This imagination that you can cordon off a little zone and call it exclusively your own cannot work, because even if it is fish, and Honorable Anjala in the clip is talking about fish. Fish is an important source of livelihood for the people in this region, for our people in that region, basically the entire Lake Victoria basin. But fish breeds in Kenya. All the breeding grounds for fish are in Kenya.
Kenyan side.
So if we were to say, let us build walls and everybody sort of cordons off their own little corner, then you are going to leave all the breeding grounds in Kenya and all the growing grounds elsewhere, perhaps in Uganda. Then what do? You completely destabilize the ecological equilibrium, because it's important to protect the ecological equilibrium of the lake, and that is why it is important to treat it as a shared resource.
And might have expansive consequences to the aquatic life in Lake Victoria.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, Honorable Ababu Namwamba, let's take a short break here on the program. And when we come back, we'll turn our attention to the angling for influence between the United States of America, the United Kingdom as it prepares to leave the European Union, and of course China, which are all looking at the African continent, and how we will play our cards as a country, and of course by large extension the African continent. That's coming up next after the short break. All right, thank you so much. You're still watching the program. Many thanks for choosing to stay with us. You are watching News Compass, and you can be part of this conversation too. On Twitter, the hashtag is News Compass, and of course on Facebook we are live on facebook.com/Ebru TV Kenya. Now, Honorable Namwamba, let's now turn our attention and of course focus much as we flip the pages to the African continent. Of course, Kenya is a key player in the continent, but we are seeing a time, or we live in a century, a contemporary society, where the African continent is again at the focus or under the microscope of Washington, Beijing and London, all angling for influence in the African continent. President Kenyatta recently visited Washington, in which he paid a courtesy call afterwards invitation by President Donald Trump, and subsequently went to Beijing for the FOCAC Africa Summit. So what do we stand to gain out of such important international cooperations and visit, and how well does this spice up our position in terms of remaining a dominant regional player, and of course have that relevance and use diplomatic leverage across the African continent?
The world has become a big village where everybody somehow is connected to everybody else, and what happens in one corner of the globe has implications for everyone else, and Kenya therefore cannot exist as an island. What is important for Kenyans to know is that we have done very well. We have done very well in anchoring a very clear foreign policy. Kenya has a very, very clear foreign policy that you can touch, you can identify, whether we are talking about Afrocentrism, giving prominence to Africa, whether you're talking about support for multilateralism, so that multilateral organizations like the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, these are pillars of our foreign policy that are easily identifiable. But we have also had a very good thrust in terms of the work of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs has done very well in anchoring Kenya's position globally. But then we also have a president that has cut a very good niche. At Foreign Affairs, we call President Uhuru Kenyatta as our Kenya's diplomat #1.
Okay, ambassador.
Ambassador #1, because he has done extremely well. When he addressed the United Nations General Assembly in September, he did so well that actually his address received significant prominence. And it is during that General Assembly that he was also given the honor of being the UN champion for young people, for youth. And we were with him in Paris last month for the
commemoration of the First World War.
Yes, and the first ever Paris Peace Forum. He was only one of 11 African presidents from this region. It was only him and President Kagame that were invited to that forum. And he did very well. He spoke very passionately about this continent, and he advances Kenya's position very well. And so we have done well. In terms of relating to global powers like the United States, like China, again, we have done extremely well. The president has been able to have a state visit to the United States a few months ago. He has been a frequent visitor to China, and we have fantastic relations with both the United States and China. We have very good relations with Russia. We have very good relations with Japan, with Germany, with the United Kingdom, and even continental bodies like the European Union. So we have a good niche. Kenya has a good niche. And in terms of global geopolitics, Kenya, I would say, is in a very, very strong position. And that, of course, is also helped by our position on the continent. We are a gateway into this continent. And the message we send out is that when you enter Kenya, when you set up shop in Kenya, even as an investor, you have a direct access to 1.2 billion Africans, from the Cape to Cairo, from Mombasa to Lagos.
Dakar.
Yes, to Dakar, whichever point. And so, yeah, Kenyans can rest assured that our diplomatic blueprint globally is very strong.
Yes. Now let's break it down to three key important issues here. And there's President Donald Trump on one hand with the Make America Great Again as policy number one. You have China, pet projects of President Xi Jinping targeting the African continent, of course, launched in Senegal, Mauritania, Rwanda, and across the African continent. And Prime Minister Theresa May or the UK is generally leaving the European Union, despite the hard times she is facing in terms of the local politics in the UK. But equally, this seems to be attributing to or pointing out to a confusing signal community across the international community. So how do we navigate or maneuver around this harsh environment? Because you have President Donald Trump, for instance, who is not committed to international obligations, say he has walked out of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal under President Barack Obama. He also walked away and acknowledged the 2015 Paris Climate Accord, and recently mended ties with President Xi during the conclusion of the G20 summit in Argentina. So we need to play our cards well here. So how strategic should we be in this confusing and unpredictable diplomatic environment?
Really, it's just by being us, by being ourselves, by remaining true to the principles that define us. And those principles are clear to identify. You know, when you are yourself and you don't live by pretense, it's easy for you to respect others, and it's even easier for others to respect you. For instance, Kenya believes in multilateralism. We believe that multilateral platforms like the United Nations, like the World Trade Organization, are important platforms that secure global peace and security and stability, but also provide a platform for sharing prosperity across the world and amongst humanity. So we believe in multilateralism. So when we engage with President Trump, or when we engage with Jinping, they will know that Kenya as a country is a respecter of multilateralism. We also believe in respecting the sovereignty of nations, that every nation must be respected with all its peculiarities. So whether we engage with China and its unique brand of politics, or the US with its known brand of democracy, we respect each nation's sovereignty in its own unique fashion. And that is how we are doing it. And so we do not find any difficulty in letting the world know that this is who we are. These are the principles we respect. And as we engage with you, we respect these principles. And it's on that account that we normally play a very prominent role, whether it is in the African Union or in the UN General Assembly. You may know, for instance, that Kenya will be seeking one of the non-permanent members
of the Security
Council for the year 2021-2022, because we believe we have a role to play in platforms such as those. Okay,
it's still remaining with the conference on the borders of the multilateralism here you have mentioned, is that the big worry here is that I've been trying to follow up with President Donald Trump, because he is the president of the free world and the president of the sole superpower in the 21st century. But when a president like that, as called African countries, S-whole countries, I don't want to mention that on air, has lied more than 5,000 times, that's an average of 8 lies a day, walked out from international commitments by the United States of America, he is not reasonably clear, according to international players and partners within the confines of diplomatic community. Doesn't that worry us as a country?
What I would say is that as a country, we will remain true to the principles that guide our diplomatic relations. There are certain issues that you mentioned about President Trump, which in my view belong to the purview of domestic issues and the responsibility of the American people to deal with them. In terms of whether the US decides to belong to any multilateral agency or not, whether they decided to walk out of a particular pact or not, that again is a sovereign decision by them. If we believe, for instance, that we need the World Trade Organization to remain strong, we will go to the World Trade Organization, and I've sat in several forums of the World Trade Organization where, as Kenya, we have pushed hard and lobbied strongly for a strong World Trade Organization. So whereas they may take their position, it will not take away our own position, and it will not take away our responsibility to lobby other nations of the world to go by what we believe is good for humanity, is good for world stability and shared prosperity for humanity. Yes.
And of course, when towards that, the attainment of that goal, it's important for Kenya and for the other players too within the confines of the international community, the global village at the moment. But all partners and players need to be committed to the cause, and of course that's why there is some sense of worry with regards to Donald Trump. However, allow me to come to the China, United States of America, and of course British Prime Minister Theresa May was recent to visit Kenya in her three-nation visit of Africa, Nigeria, and South Africa and Kenya, of course all former colonies of Britain. And as they leave the European Union, they seem seeking or in search for partners who will remain solid to trade with the UK as a sole partner now that they will be leaving the European Union as the triggering of Article 50 of the Lisbon Agreement comes to effect. Equally, does it again boost our chances in terms of one, dealing the European Union as a community, and then maintaining the trade and diplomatic ties with the UK, which is a strategic key partner in trade, say, in diplomatic relations and security and the stability of the Horn of Africa region?
The UK is an important friend, is an important partner to Kenya with very, very strong historical ties. And we have dealt with the UK in that context of a friend and a partner with strong historical ties, and we'll continue to do so. But even as we have dealt with the UK in that fashion, we have also had a direct relationship with the European Union. And I don't see any contradiction. The decision of the UK to exit, Brexit, is a sovereign decision of the people of the United Kingdom. And as I've said consistently and persistently on this show, among the principles that guide Kenya's foreign policy is respect for sovereignty. And we respect the sovereign decision of any country to decide whether they want to belong to any multilateral organization or not. So we will continue to engage the UK as the UK, and we'll also continue to engage the European Union, with whom Kenya also enjoys very strong, very cordial relations. And the UK is a key development partner for Kenya and a key market for Kenyan products. Yes.
Okay, let's now bring the fascinating figures here with regards to the mathematics, and I'll come to the debt, the second phase of the SGR to be bankrolled by the Chinese government, of course, as pledged by the Chinese government under President Xi Jinping. But Chinese imports and exports amounted to about 170 billion US dollars in 2017. And we lie in a triangular approach between Beijing, Washington, and London. I mean, they are all equal players. They are all, important players and partners in the international community. And the three of them are, of course, permanent members of the UN Security Council. So In terms of carrying the cards and playing very well, you as the salesperson at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs alongside Ambassador Monica Juma, President Kenyatta being the free will ambassador for the country representing Kenyans, how do we need to maintain all these ties at a go with the same approach? Because we don't want to lose one and remain with two. Let's get 3 out of 3. So how do we go about it?
And the fortunate thing is that it's not a game of either or. We are not like railroaded or locked in a pigeonhole of either or. We have managed over the years to maintain cordial relations with all these 3 countries, the US, the UK, and China. We have a lot of common interests with all these 3 countries. There is no conflict at all in terms of us continuing to maintain our relations with these 3 countries. And our relationship to each of these 3 countries is unique in its own way. Our relationship with China is unique in its own way. And we'll continue to engage with them in a manner that is respectful, that is good for the world or global order, but is also in the strategic interest of Kenya. For instance, you mentioned the rather heavy balance of trade that is heavily in favor of China in our relationship with China. But that is why during the first China International Import Expo in Shanghai between the 6th and the 10th of November, only last month, among the things that the Kenyan delegation led by His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta himself pushed very hard was for China to relax their conditions for Kenyan produce to enter the Chinese market. And we secured a deal that will allow Kenyan fresh produce, flowers, vegetables, avocados, fruits, and even processed food stuff like processed macadamia, processed sesame, to enter the large Chinese market. And you know, when you talk about China, you're talking about a market of 1 point, how many? Billion. You're talking about an incredible number of people. And so those are measures intended to find some equilibrium in the trade between our 2 countries. And so this is something we are doing with each of these countries. We have started direct flights between Nairobi and JF Kennedy Airport in New York. A significant step, a significant measure. Because remember, American tourists are key to our tourism sector here in Kenya. And these flights are intended to raise that even higher and allow trade to flow at an even greater volume between Washington and Nairobi, between Kenya and the United States. These are part of the measure that we are taking. And as I've said, it is not mutually exclusive that if you deal with China, you cannot deal with, if you deal with Beijing, you cannot deal with Washington. Or if you're dealing with Washington, you cannot deal with London. We can deal with all these friends at the same time in our own unique way, and we are doing it very well.
And the decree has been, while there has been the growing concern, and of course when the president addresses that, it's important because Kenyan goods also need to enter the Chinese market, and the numbers don't lie. More than 1 billion plus equally can be a very well economic growth for the country. But there's also the decree on the end that many African countries decried the Chinese labor violations of existing African labor laws in the continent. And I was just reading through some of the papers that do cover the continent, and I just want to quote the former ECOWAS, that's Economic Bloc of West Africa spokesperson Adama Gay, who said that there are clear instances in which the Chinese come with a labor force without due respect for the existence labor force in the country, with considering a continent that has a bulk of young people who can pump that energy into the infrastructure development across the continent. In keeping tabs with that particular relationship with China and Africa, how do we make it for the African continent a win-win situation? We gain, they gain. As a people, we develop.
We have made it very clear, and by the way, only yesterday I was presiding over a very interesting ceremony that was hosted by the Chinese embassy to mark 55 years of diplomatic relations between Kenya and China. And as part of those celebrations, 20 Chinese companies honored 55 Kenyan employees that are employed here in those companies in about 24 counties. And my message was very simple. Number one, for the skills that are available in Kenya, Chinese companies and other multilateral, this is not limited to China, by the way. It is for all multilateral companies, that for the skills available in Kenya, hire Kenyans. For skills that we may not have locally, then of course the skills transfer can be part of the business arrangement between those multilateral companies and Kenya, and it is not it's not justified for certain skills to be duplicated, and that of course then frustrates our people. And remember, Kenya is not just your ordinary African country. This is a country that has one of the best trained skilled labor. Kenyan young people belong to the very top drawer. The
creme.
I mean, creme de la creme of intellectual capacity, of skills training. And so when you set up shop here, you don't need to import skilled labor from elsewhere. You can rely on the Kenyan labor force. And that way we forge a relationship that is mutually beneficial.
Yeah. Time has beaten us as ever, but one final and a brief response from you. I'm sure your position is as challenging as the one of your boss, Ambassador Monica Juma, who is the Foreign Affairs Minister. You represent us. Of course, we are proud of you. But equally, how do you win over countries to make sure that Kenya stays put at the global front and that the current viscous diplomatically continues and we maintain the consistency, the purposefulness of the Kenyan flag going on up across the international community?
I can answer that by quoting two sayings. One is an African saying, a common African saying, that if you want to walk very, very fast, if you want to go very fast, you walk alone. But if you want to go very far, you work with others. We always seek to build synergy and work along with others. And that is why we have played very well in any multilateral or bilateral arrangement in which we have been a party to. The second one are the words of Robert Greene from his famous book, 48 Laws of Power, is that the best way to influence people is to behave the way you'd want them to behave. Basically demonstrate rather than explain. And Kenya does this if we are talking about respect for the will of the people. We have invested in a constitution under the democratic institutions. If it's about sovereignty, we respect the sovereignty of others. If it is about multilateralism, we push for the best interest of multilateralism. So we are real. Kenya's diplomatic trust is strong because we are principled, we are real, and we respect others. As ever, time has beaten us. Thank you so much. CAS, Foreign Affairs, Chief Administrative Secretary the Ababu Namwamba, the former Member of Parliament for Budalangi constituency. I do appreciate your time and thank you so much for gracing us despite your tight schedule. We thank you so much as the Ibro fraternity. And thank you to you too for watching the program. As ever, you can contribute your comments on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Ibro TV Kenya. On Twitter, the hashtag was News Compass, on Twitter at Ayub Abdikadir and at Ibro TV Kenya.